In case anyone was wondering.
Nice to see you, my friend. You have a good evening.
Have a great show.
All right. Here is how today started. Donald Trump was scheduled to do a sit-down interview with some reporters at the National Association of Black Journalists convention in Chicago. And here's how today is going for Donald Trump.
You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She is always identified as a black woman. She went to a historically black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be
I love the black population of this country, which is only slightly less weird than how he addressed people last week, my beautiful Christians. A Harris campaign ad responded in real time saying, quote, "This is who he is. That is who Donald Trump is." And Vice President Harris responded tonight.
This afternoon, Donald Trump spoke at the annual meeting of the National Association of Black Journalists. And it was the same old show. The divisiveness and the disrespect. And let me just say, the American people deserve better. The American people deserve better. The American people deserve a leader who tells the truth, a leader who does not respond with hostility and anger when confronted with the facts. We deserve a leader who understands that our differences do not divide us. They are an essential source of our strength.
She doesn't need to dwell on it because her campaign is winning. In a major campaign news announcement today, Vice President Harris won the endorsement of the United Auto Workers. UAW President Shawn Fain said, quote, "This campaign is bringing together people from all walks of life, building a movement that can defeat Donald Trump at the ballot box. For our 1 million active and retired members, the choice is clear. We will elect Kamala Harris to be our next president this November," end quote. Vice President Harris is expected to rally in Detroit with her soon-to-be-named running mate, where they will celebrate that endorsement next week. And today, Future Forward is running this new battleground state ad.
I'm running to fight for an America where the economy works for working people, where you only have to work one job to pay the bills, and where hard work is rewarded, where reproductive rights are not just protected by the Constitution of the United States, but guaranteed in every state, because that's our America. And that's the America I believe in.
Donald Trump held a rally this evening in battleground Pennsylvania with the same old riffs like Hannibal Lecter, which were overshadowed by his disastrous performance at the NABJ today. But tonight, speaking at the Sigma Gamma Rho sorority boule in Houston, Vice President Harris urged voters to respond at the ballot box.
Our nation is counting on you to energize, to organize, and to mobilize, to register folks to vote and get them to the polls. Because when we organize, mountains move. When we mobilize, nations change. And when we vote, we make history.
Joining us now is Pennsylvania's Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis. Lieutenant Governor, good to see you. I drove from New York to Philly last night, and I saw all those billboards. Boy, they're starting. This is battleground Pennsylvania, and it is going to be a very, very important few months for you. How's it looking?
You know, it's great to be with you. I feel good. The energy that we've seen for Vice President Harris over this last few weeks has been electric. We've seen thousands of new people sign up to volunteer. We've seen the campaign really get off on a good start in terms of fundraising. People are excited in Pennsylvania. So as the vice president said in that clip earlier, we're going to organize, we're going to mobilize, and we're going to defeat Donald Trump at the ballot box. And I'm confident with the work that we're going to do in Pennsylvania, she's going to be victorious come November. When you look at the various battleground states, they all have a little bit of a different flavor, something that has to happen in order to win. And when you look at Pennsylvania over the years, nobody, except in statewide elections, but presidential elections tend to be a little bit tighter in Pennsylvania all the time. It's a place where you got to fight for every 10, 100, 1,000 votes. What's the thing that's going to make the difference for Kamala Harris? Because either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump need Pennsylvania in order to become president. Look, I think the contrast is clear in this election. We have a vice president who's been fighting for working people, fighting to defend our democracy and standing up for reproductive freedom. And we have a former president who, quite frankly, is trying to take us backwards, who wants to divide us, who wants to make sure that certain Americans don't succeed. We saw that highlighted in the disrespect that he showed at the NABJ earlier today. And the contrast is clear. And I think at the end of the day, Pennsylvanians are going to vote for a brighter future. They're going to vote to protect our freedoms, and they're going to vote to secure our democracy right here in the birthplace of our democracy by electing Kamala Harris as our next president. You talked about NABJ. What did you see when you watched that? Because depending on who you are and what your life experience is, you may have heard something a little bit different from Donald Trump. He was asked a question about why black voters should trust him given the things that he said. And he had some weird answers, including about Kamala Harris's multi-ethnic background. Yeah, you know, I got to say, who the hell is Donald Trump to question Vice President Harris's blackness? You know, she is an accomplished woman who attended a historically black college, is a card-carrying member of the oldest African-American sorority in the nation, Alpha Kappa Alpha. She has proven she doesn't need to prove anything to him. It's the latest example of his disrespect that's often targeted at women in marginalized communities. And quite frankly, it's disqualifying for him to serve as our president. We need a leader who's going to bring people together, who's going to work to get things done. Donald Trump has proven time and time again he wants to separate us, and he wants to treat certain classes of people different. And we can't tolerate that. We have to fight for a candidate that's going to bring everyone together. And that's what Vice President Harris is going to do. Which somebody like you has to do in a place like Pennsylvania, because you can't win an election in that state with one constituency. Obviously, we saw with Barack Obama in 2008, 2012, black people in major urban centers in Pennsylvania, like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, they responded very positively to that. But you just got a big, complicated state with lots of people. What is the message that you most want to hear from Kamala Harris? Not necessarily the one that's most appealing nationally, but the thing that's going to get you those electoral college votes in Pennsylvania. You know, as I crisscross the Commonwealth, there are a few things that bind all of us together, regardless of where you're at, whether you're in rural Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, or Philadelphia. Everybody wants an economy that works for everyone, where everyone has the opportunity to have a family-sustaining job, to earn a livable wage, and to live the American dream. Everyone wants to make sure that we have safer communities. Vice President Harris has been leading on the Office of Gun Violence Prevention at the White House to make our communities safer. Her administration has delivered lower crime rates as opposed to the Trump administration, where we saw crime skyrocket. And people want to make sure that their children have a quality education. And so it's about making sure that everyone has those ladders of opportunity to succeed. I think the vice president is starting to lay out her case in her campaign that's not even barely 2 weeks old at this point. And folks are really going to rally, I believe, in Pennsylvania towards her vision, because ultimately those are the things that unite us. People just want the freedom to live the American dream, the freedom to make their own decisions for them and their family. Look, I'm the proud husband of a black woman, the father of a black girl, and I'm fighting for my daughter's future to make sure that she has the freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. And I think that's what every Pennsylvanian wants for them and their family. And I think the vice president has spoken to that over her time as an attorney general, a United States senator, and now as our vice president. And as our next president, she's going to deliver on those results.
What about Josh Shapiro? Does that help seal the deal if Josh Shapiro's her vice presidential candidate?
Well, let me tell you, I've known Josh Shapiro for years. He is a tremendous public servant. We are so lucky to have him serving as our governor here in the Commonwealth, and I'm proud and honored to be his governing partner and his lieutenant governor. I can tell you Josh Shapiro is going to be great no matter what he does, but ultimately the vice president is going to make a decision that's deeply personal to her about who is the person that she wants to serve as president and vice president with. And we're going to respect whatever decision she makes, but I'm proud to be Josh Shapiro's governing partner.
Lieutenant Governor, good to see you. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis. Coming up, Arizona's biggest Donald Trump sycophant and election denier is now officially the Republican nominee for the United States Senate. The Democrat facing her in that race, Congressman Ruben Gallego, joins me after a break.
Nothing dims my light like a migraine. With Nurtec ODT, I found relief.
The only migraine medication that helps treat and prevent all in one.
To those with migraine, I see you.
For the acute treatment of migraine with or without aura and the preventive treatment of episodic migraine in adults. Don't take if allergic to Nurtec ODT. Allergic reactions can occur even days after using. Most common side effects were nausea, indigestion, and stomach pain.
It's time we all shine. Talk to a healthcare provider about Nurtec ODT from Pfizer.
On Chewy, save 35% off your first order when you shop all the brands your pet loves. With selection for any pet with any diet, Chewy has a taste for every tummy. All right at your fingertips. All the brands they love to devour at prices you love to pay. Delivered fast right to your door. With Chewy, make mealtime delicious every time. For low prices and fast shipping, for life with pets, there's Chewy with everything.
I have an obligation to find a way of telling this story that is fresh, that has angles that haven't been used in the course of the day, to bring my experience working in the Senate, working in journalism for many years, to try to make sense of what has happened in that news day and help you make sense of what it means to you and what it's going to mean to you tomorrow and what it's going to mean to you next year.
I think the issue that will determine who wins this election is the question of freedom. Freedom over your own body for women, freedom to read, freedom for parents of LGBTQ kids to parent them, whether you're talking about state races, local races, congressional races, or the race for president. The freedom question is actually the most important question on the ballot, really.
Okay, we now have candidates in the race for Arizona Senator Kristen Sinema's seat. Congressman Ruben Gallego will face the Trump-endorsed election denier Kari Lake, who beat out two challengers to win the Republican nomination last night. Kari Lake has often been seen on national TV lying about the 2020 election, but the Gallego campaign is making sure that Arizona voters know where she stands on abortion.
Kari Lake is lying about Ruben Gallego to distract you from her record on abortion.
It's not a choice that somebody gets to make. That's not a medical choice. I don't think abortion pills should be legal. It is not health care. It is the killing, it is the execution of a baby. It's almost a genocide. Arizona will not be a state where abortions are happening, not be a state where abortions are happening.
Kari Lake lost the statewide race for Arizona governor in 2022, even though in true Trumpian fashion, she falsely claimed that her election was rigged. Arizona's Republican primary results are alarming. Aside from Kari Lake's victory, VoteBeat points out, quote, many Republican state and county officials in Arizona who have defended the fairness of the state's elections appear to have lost primary races on Tuesday to challengers who campaigned at least in part on the idea of stolen or broken elections. That includes the Maricopa County Recorder, Stephen Richer, who faced death threats and harassment after calling out Trump and his allies, casting doubt on the 2020 election results in Arizona. He lost to an election denier. Joining us now is the Congressman Ruben Gallego. He's the Democratic nominee for United States Senate in Arizona. Congratulations on your victory there. This is an interesting case because in Arizona, the statewide victory of the Democratic candidates in the last election depended in some case on the fact that there were Republicans who feel that your state has a rich history of conservatism, and these quacks are not it.
Unfortunately, they are not it. However, this is what we are fighting, and we have to be ready. This is why Democrats have to step up. This is why we have to defeat election deniers like Kari Lake. And if you want to join me in doing that, please go to Gallego for Arizona to help us. We're going to need every bit of help. But we are losing honorable men and women, Republicans in the Reagan conservative nature, because they're standing up for democracy. Stephen Richer is a neighbor of mine. Literally, he is my neighbor. We have dinner together. We have drinks together. Our families know each other. And even though, he and I will disagree almost 90% of the time, at the core, we agree on one thing, that we love our democracy and we'll do anything to defend it. And it's scary that we are running away from the McCain veterans, the veterans that have been fighting to save this country for so long, and running to the election deniers that we see, such as in the vein of Kari Lake.
So now tell me about that. Show me what that path looks like to victory for you and those who want to keep going with this republic that we've got in the United States for November. Because on one hand, it's a big flashing red light how many votes the Republican victors like Kari Lake got last night. On the other hand, it does alienate those McCain Republicans. It does alienate mainstream conservatives. It does alienate a whole lot of people who were talked about in those Trump indictments, who are Republicans who said, I'm not going to go against the Constitution of the United States for you, Donald Trump.
Look, the way it looks like is I go and I talk to everybody. I've been traveling this state for 18 months, going to some of the reddest parts of the state, talking to veterans, talking about how we had an oath and did an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States. I'm very proud that I'm a Iraq combat veteran. And like many other veterans in this country, independents, Republicans, we care first about defending our republic and defending the Constitution of the United States. And then we worry about the politics. And I think a lot of them, and from talking to them, they are stepping up with me. They're going to say that we're going to defend this republic and defend democracy, and we're going to do it at the ballot box. Once we start with that base, then we're going out even further. We're talking to people that feel that they've been left out from the Republican Party. You're going to be talking to Mayor Giles next pretty soon. That's a perfect example of a conservative Republican mayor who has done everything he can for his community, and yet his own party has pushed him out. We are talking to them on the fact that we are the party that is willing to bring them in, have a big tent, and really fight for a future of Arizona. You're not going to get that from the Kari Lake campaign. All she has is divisiveness, anger, and not an ability to even unify her party, let alone the whole state.
Let's talk about the presidential race. In Arizona, you've got this existential issue of democracy and believing in elections. You can sort of combine that with the abortion issue because it is related to our personal freedoms.
It's freedom, absolutely,
right.
Yes.
On the other hand, you've got Kamala Harris, who is talking about a future and not looking back. It's sort of a different vein of campaign, and it seems to be working. It's positive. It's very future-oriented. What's going to play in Arizona?
Look, Arizona is an aspirational state. People move here to continue their lives, to grow, to buy a house, start their families, study, start businesses. This state is doing the gangbusters when it comes to business startups. We have the lowest unemployment in the history of the country. So looking forward, but recognizing that we have challenges really matters. And this is why it's important that we talk about what we're going to do, not just who you should hate. We're going to talk about how we're going to work together, not how you're going to divide us, which is what you get from people like Carrie Lake. We're going to talk about the successes we had with the CHIPS Act, where we're actually bringing in some of the most high-tech jobs that this country has seen, and they're all happening here in Arizona. So that is what it's going to happen. If you go and talk to Latinos, a very big growing population in this state. I just had a great event, Juntos con Gallego, and we talked about the American dream and how you could acquire that American dream here in the United States, but you need to have someone that actually believes in you. And we are the people. I am that campaign that actually believes not just in Latinos being able to accomplish the American dream, but any Arizonan, as long as they're willing to put their gut into it and their fight into it.
The border issue is a real issue for Arizonans. Talk to me about that. It is a attack line that Republicans are using with Kamala Harris. Talk to me about how you approach it in your state.
Well, look, the way I approach it is the same thing I've been doing. I've been going and talking to our border mayors, border sheriffs, border county officials, talking to border patrols. As a matter of fact, I actually met with Border Patrol Union this morning down in Yuma, Arizona. And we've been sitting down listening for quite a while and also providing the resources they need in order for them to try to control that border. To our mayors and sheriffs and first responders, for them to not be overwhelmed by the broken immigration system. Which remind people that we want a border solution, right? And there was a border solution that was negotiated between Democrats and Republicans. And cynical politicians like Carrie Lake said, without reading that bill, to reject it. Why? Not because there's a better solution, but it was a better political outcome for her. We are going to bring the border solutions that it needs so we can finally have security on the border, while at the same time making sure that we leave open the possibility and work for comprehensive immigration reform.
Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Congressman Ruben Gallego of Arizona. He's now the Senate candidate for the Democrats. The Republican mayor of Mesa, Arizona, John Giles, is urging Republicans to vote for Kamala Harris and against Donald Trump to stop the anti-democratic extremism in the Republican Party. In an op-ed published in the Arizona Republic, he writes, quote, "The Republican Party with Trump at its helm continues down the path of political extremism, away from focusing on our fundamental freedoms. Now more than ever, we need leaders who will put country over party. Kamala Harris is the competent, just, and fair leader our country deserves. This year, too much is at stake to vote Republican at the top of the ticket. Let us put country over party by voting to stop Trump and protect our democracy," end quote. Joining us now is the Republican mayor of Mesa, Arizona, John Giles. Mayor Giles, first of all, you just heard Ruben Gallego had very complimentary things to say about you. And I spent a lot of time in Arizona before the last election, and I met a lot of people like you. Right? Conservatives, Republicans, proud of the tradition of your state. Your beliefs are your beliefs, and you feel that we live in a pluralistic society where people can have different beliefs. But your belief is in democracy.
Absolutely. Yeah, Arizona does have a rich tradition of having a strong Republican Party and a healthy Republican Party, and that's just no longer the case. Folks like Carrie Lake and Donald Trump literally have come into the Arizona Republican Party and told us, quote unquote, to get the hell out of the room. And so it has been a frustrating experience for those of us that are proud of that grand tradition. People like John McCain are what attracted us to the party. I worry now that the young people looking at the party of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, why would they want to join that party?
You are the tip of the spear in Arizona in terms of the crazy stuff that some people have decided to do, but they're across the country. Michigan's got a good share of them too. What do you want to happen? What does success look like for somebody like you, a conservative who says we got to preserve this republic, and Kamala Harris is the right answer? When will that stop? When will you get your party back, and how does your party come back?
Well, we desperately need two healthy parties.
Yes.
You know, I continue to identify as a Republican because it does more accurately describe where I'm at in terms of my policy beliefs. I am a strong supporter of Kamala Harris in spite of the fact that we do disagree on some policy issues. But I know that the top of her agenda is doing what's best for the United States. And I also know that's not what's on Donald Trump's agenda. So victory for me, frankly, would be seeing my party bottom out. You talked about the election results in Arizona yesterday from our primary elections.
Yeah.
MAGA candidates did very, very well.
Yeah.
But what that has done is set the stage for the same general election outcomes that we've seen over the last 2 or 3 elections.
Because they don't have as broad appeal as they would like to think they have.
Yeah, the MAGA candidates lost horribly in Arizona over the last few elections. And so I predict that's going to happen again. And I certainly hope that it happens at the top of the ticket.
So if you're talking about a phoenix rising from the ashes, and everybody, no matter what your politics are, you should believe that there should at least be two healthy parties in a country. Does Trump being defeated get you closer to that?
Yes, I think eventually we've got to invite back to the Republican Party a lot of folks like me that have left. Right now, the largest political party in Arizona is none. It is the Independents. And that's because there's been many people like myself and more centrist Republicans have left the party because we've been invited to, point blank, by people like Carrie Lake, but also because it's become a party of political extremists. And that's just not healthy. It's not a tent that's big enough to have any type of a debate if you are contradicting the dogma of the MAGA folks.
And in the last election, that happened. There were a lot of Republicans who continued to identify as Republicans or maybe have left the party, but they're conservatives and they would like to be Republicans who voted for Democratic candidates in Arizona, and that's what made the difference in Arizona.
Absolutely. You know, in the last election, I endorsed a Democrat for Senate, U.S. Senate, Mark Kelly. Very proud. Fingers crossed that he's on the ticket. And then also our Democratic governor, because she was being challenged by Carrie Lake. And so, again, my preference would be to endorse Republican candidates, but time and time again, it's impossible for people like me who are looking for the best candidate to do that. And particularly people like me that are trying to protect my city from candidates that would be very dangerous to the well-being of our republic and my city if they were elected.
Thank you for your time tonight, sir. We appreciate it. The mayor of Mesa, Arizona, John Giles. All right, coming up tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris reminded voters in Texas of the get-out-of-jail-free card that the Supreme Court granted Donald Trump should he become president again. Up next, I'll be joined by the retired federal judge Michael Ludig, who excoriated conservative Supreme Court justices for that ruling and has called Donald Trump a clear and present danger to American democracy.
The more love we give, the more love we feel. The more love we feel, the more rainbows we puke. The more rainbows we puke, the more oranges we anthropomorphize. The more oranges we anthropomorphize, the more deer we become. The more deer we become, the more friends we find. The more friends we find, the more our friends find us. The more our friends find us, the more love we feel. The more love we feel, the more love we give.
One of the things I like about what I get to do is that each day is pretty unique. I might find out that there's not a lot of new numbers in the world today, and so today's going to be a day I'm going to spend researching. The only way to really be prepared is to get it all in my brain ahead of time.
This month, the Supreme Court basically just told the former president, who has been convicted of fraud, that going forward, he will be immune for activity we know he is prepared to engage in if he gets back into the White House. Recall, Donald Trump has openly vowed, if reelected, to be a dictator on day one, that he will weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies, that he will round up peaceful protesters and throw them out of our country, and even, quote, terminate the United States Constitution.
Vice President Harris tonight in Houston. This week, President Joe Biden called for a constitutional amendment in the wake of the Supreme Court's shocking presidential immunity decision. Our next guest, the retired federal judge Michael Luttig, a highly influential conservative jurist, endorsed President Biden's plan, writing, quote, "I support a constitutional amendment that would repudiate the Supreme Court's faithless decision in Trump v. United States and restore the animating principle of our nation and of our Constitution that no man is above the law, least of all the President of the United States," end quote. Luttig lambasted the Supreme Court's abominable decision as one that cut the heart and soul out of America's democracy and the rule of law. Quote, "No longer can it be said that in America no man is above the law, because on that day, the Supreme Court held that the President of the United States, and in particular the former President of the United States, actually is above the law," end quote. Judge Luttig was a stalwart conservative. He worked with then-future Supreme Court Justice John Roberts in the Reagan administration. In 2005, Judge Luttig was on the shortlist for the Supreme Court seat that's now held by Samuel Alito. Both Justices Roberts and Alito voted to grant Trump immunity. Justice Alito had the American flag flying upside down outside his house after the attack on the Capitol. That's a symbol used by election deniers. Judge Luttig went the other way. In the days before January 6, 2021, Judge Luttig, who was then a private citizen, advised Mike Pence that he had no power to overrule the Electoral College results, giving the then Vice President the cover that he needed to do the right thing. In 2022, Judge Luttig delivered one of the sharpest warnings while testifying to the January 6th committee.
Donald Trump and his allies and supporters.
He said these election-denying Republicans, he was talking about Arizona, are, he said, a danger to the Republic. You have used this language. You're not saying this is outlandish and wacky. You're saying it's an actual danger.
I have, Ali, and thank you for having me on tonight. It's always a pleasure. A stake was driven through the heart of America's democracy on January 6, 2021, and it has been teetering on a knife's edge ever since. You referenced my testimony before the January 6th committee. There I said, essentially a year later, that the former president was a clear and present danger to American democracy for what he had done and what he had attempted to do on January 6, 2021. For the past 3.5 years, the former president and now his Republican Party have continued to deny January 6, and they've continued to defy Americans' democracy and the rule of law to this day. And in fact, they're campaigning on their view that January 6th was needed and right. And most recently, I've said that as of today, I believe for those reasons that the former president is an imminent danger to American democracy. You know, Ali, it's America's democracy and rule of law that have made America the beacon of freedom to the world and made America the envy of the world for almost 250 years. And as you said, with Trump versus United States, the Supreme Court cut the heart and soul out of America's democracy and the rule of law. Americans fought the Revolutionary War against the British Crown in order to secure this nation's independence and to create a new nation with a constitutional government in which no man, least of all the President of the United States, would be above the law. And for 250 years, Allie, the fundamental principle and promise of America and the Constitution has been that no man is above the law. You didn't reference my post of this past week, but in that post, I quoted Thomas Paine in his famous pamphlet, Common Sense, written in support of America's independence from the British Crown. And Thomas Paine rhetorically asked the question that was on the minds and the lips of every American, who is the monarch? Who is the king in America? And Thomas Paine went on to answer that question. In America, the monarch, if there is a monarch, and the king, if there is a king, is the law. It can never be said again that in America, no man is above the law after July 1st, when the Supreme Court granted the President of the United States, and in particular, the former President of the United States of America, essentially absolute immunity to commit crimes and offenses against the United States of America.
And that's the key part. It's not just to do his job. It's to freedom to actually commit the crimes. Judge, we're going to take a quick break to pay the bills. When we come back, I want to talk about this constitutional amendment that Joe Biden has suggested and that you say you support. Judge Michael Ludig with me on the other side. We're taking a quick break now.
When I was working in the Senate, I didn't realize that it's the perfect training for the job that I have now, covering government, covering politics. The complexity of it all. You learn how to explain that and how to live through that when you work in this building. Mastering the detail is crucial to being able to present anything that happens in Senate buildings like this or any of the other news centers that we have to focus on every day.
In an NBC News exclusive interview this week, Attorney General Merrick Garland said this about the Supreme Court's Trump immunity decision.
I don't believe any person should be above the law, and that includes a president or a former president. Our position on this case was expressed in the briefs in the case. We have a different view than the court ended up having.
Still with us, Judge Michael Ludig. Judge, earlier I had a great conversation with Professor Tribe of Harvard, who sends his warmest to you. And he made the point that while people will say a constitutional amendment to sort of undo the damage of this decision is a heavy lift, he said, frankly, everybody should support it. Even Trump supporters should understand that one day Donald Trump won't be in office and some other president can use this perverse decision in their favor. He said it's not impossible. We should start talking about it. And you seem to agree.
I do, Ali. I agree with Professor Tribe. What he's expressed really is sort of the phenomenon of politics always, which is for the politician, it always matters most whose ox is being gored at that moment. Mm-hmm. But it's the thinking person who thinks beyond the moment into the future, like Professor Tribe is doing, and saying, in effect, to the Republicans today, tomorrow, this will be you. And I do agree with him. This decision frequently did that myself. The way I would explain it to your viewers and listeners tonight is that Trump against the United States did more of what I will term structural violence to the Constitution than perhaps any decision of the Supreme Court that I can think of. By that, I mean the court forever unbalanced the delicate balance of the separate powers that's the bedrock of the Constitution and the bedrock of our constitutional government in America. As to the likelihood of a constitutional amendment, I agree with Professor Tribe. Every American, let's put aside the politicians and the two political parties, every American should want to amend the Constitution to repudiate this decision. There is no American that should want for the President of the United States to be above the law. The Founding Fathers, that this is the very thing that the Founding Fathers and the framers of our Constitution assumed would never, ever be the case. That the Supreme Court of the United States has now held this is offensive, and it would be offensive to the Founding Fathers and the framers of the Constitution. But it's the Constitution itself that sets forth the process by which an amendment can be made to the Constitution, and it is burdensome, if you will. That process is explained in what's Article 5 of the Constitution, and in short, it requires either 2/3 of each House of Congress or 2/3 of the states calling for a constitutional convention to consider an amendment to the Constitution, followed by 3/4 of the states ratifying that amendment that emerges from the convention or from the joint Congress. That's very difficult to achieve. It's certainly more difficult than I believe the framers of our Constitution intended or ever thought it would be. But of course, this nation is much, much larger than it was at the time of the framing of the Constitution. To Professor Tribe's point, there are many Americans and there are many politicians who would want to amend the Constitution in different ways. And in fact, over the past several years, there have been formal efforts to consider whether a constitutional amendment should be sought on one subject or another. Serious. You're familiar with one effort that was overseen and sponsored by the National Constitution Center.
That's right.
That's just to say that there are many Americans who today who would like to amend the Constitution. And there are many ways in which the Constitution ought to be amended if it were possible.
I just want to underscore a point you make, and that is that there are bad Supreme Court decisions. Historically, there have been bad decisions. Ideas change and evolve, and some of those decisions can be undone. The point you're making about this one is that it is structurally damaging and can have an effect that will be very hard to undo because it unbalances our way of thinking about our government.
That's right. And in that regard, Ali, I would want your viewers and listeners to understand that, in effect, this decision was reverse engineered by the Supreme Court to reach the result that it did in this sense. The former president has been charged by the United States of America with perhaps the gravest crimes possible by an incumbent president, with the exception of perhaps of treason.
Now there's an easier-to-use at-home skin tag remover, clinically proven to remove skin tags safely in as little as one treatment.
Which looks better, this or this? Seems clear to me. If you love to save, check out the Wise Buy sales event going on right now at America's Best. Get 2 pairs of Progressives for just $129.95. Offer includes a comprehensive eye exam. Book an exam online today.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
I can only juggle so many things. That's why I use HomaGlow. It's easy to find reliable house cleaners to keep my daily life balanced. And the best part? My first cleaning was just $19.
Yellow. Didn't pass the tissue test? Buckle up. There's toothpaste white, and there's Crest 3D White Strips white.
Whitens like a $400 professional treatment.
Prepare for a non-stop smile.
Crest.
America's hospitals go the extra mile to provide quality health care to our patients.
We are committed to putting our patients and their families first.
Providing health care your family can trust.
We're here for the communities we serve 24/7.
No one is turned away or denied the critical care they need.
America's hospitals and health systems are here for you.
Every hour, every day, for everyone.
Learn more about our commitment to patients like you.
This bakery needs new equipment fast to keep up with demand. So they're going to OnDeck, the online lender that makes it easy to choose your loan and, if approved, get funds as soon as the same day. Your loan is on deck.
I love that these dresses have shapewear built in.
When I put on Populush, I just feel like me. No matter what size I am, I know I'm gonna feel lush.
Live lush. Populush. Does back pain keep you up at night? It literally keeps me awake. But I found a bed that virtually eliminates pressure points and joint discomfort. This Safa mattress has 884 lumbar zone pocketed coils that adjust to my body's curves and movements. I bought it because it's endorsed by the American Chiropractic Association. But I'm keeping it because I'm finally getting the healthy sleep I deserve.
One of the things I like about what I get to do is that each day is pretty unique. I might find out that there's not a lot of new numbers in the world today, and so today's going to be a day that I'm going to spend researching. The only way to really be prepared is to get it all in my brain ahead of time.
And that's tonight's last word. The 11th hour with Stephanie Ruhle begins now.
Tonight, Kamala Harris responds to Donald Trump's lie-filled attacks about her race as she prepares to hit the road with her future running mate. Then the Harris campaign scores a key endorsement from the United Auto Workers Union. Plus, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker is here on the state of the 2024 race and a whole lot more as the 11th hour gets underway on this Wednesday night. Good evening once again. I'm Stephanie Ruhle. We are now just 97 days away from the election, and both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump were on the campaign trail today in a big way. In Houston tonight, the vice president responded to Trump after he attacked her identity at the National Association of Black Journalists conference. Just take a listen.
It was the same old show. The divisiveness and the disrespect. And let me just say, the American people deserve better. The American people deserve better.